welcome back to another episode of the African Football HQ podcast brought to you by Goal Africa. I'm Malik Shafa and I'm joined once again by Ed Dove. How are you, Ed?
Not bad. I was hoping for a little bit more of a summer holiday, but obviously one season ends and another season is upon us.
Yes, the Premier League starts this weekend, and this season more than ever, there are so many Africans who are ready to dominate. This whole episode is dedicated to the Africans in the Premier League. We're going to be previewing their seasons, talking about which ones will have a good season and which ones might not. We're going to start with the African Player of the Season award, or more so, which Africans are tipped to win the Player of the Season award. Who are some of the nominees, Ed?
Well, I would just say this comes on the back of Sadio Mane being nominated for the PFA Player of the Year award, but unfortunately missing out to Kevin De Bruyne. He was unfortunately defeated again, also in the Player of the Year award the year before, but he will certainly be someone who will be there or thereabouts this year, as I suppose will Mohamed Salah, as will Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. There is a lot of high-profile firepower, African firepower in the Premier League. But personally, I know you're going to have a few question marks around this one, but I'm going to go for Nicolas Pepe of Arsenal. I realise he would need to improve a lot after last season. But I just think that a few of the other African stars might be due for a drop-off in form, whereas Pepe, I think he has a lot more to offer. We saw in glimpses last season what he's capable of. I think he had a hand in 11 goals. And obviously the fact that he was signed for a 72 million transfer fee counted against him. But I think with 1 year of the Premier League under his belt, in a more optimistic, positive setup at Arsenal, I am expecting great things from him this season. So he's my tip, my early tip for the best African player of the season. What about you? Who are you going for?
It's a bit of a long shot. I would criticize you more, but I'm also going with one in Hakim Ziyech, Chelsea's new Moroccan signing. It's a tough one, you know. He's playing in the Dutch division. You can't really compare that to the Premier League, but he's a dangerous player. He creates a lot, and I'm really excited to see him at Chelsea, especially with their new attack.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from. Obviously, anyone who's watched Ziyech the last few seasons, you know what you get. I mean, the guy is bubbling over with creativity, 40 assists across the last 3 Eredivisie seasons. I guess my two concerns, I mean, he has done it in the Champions League, but I think I would ask whether he will be able to bring his Eredivisie form to the Premier League, at least in this first season. And the second thing I would say is where exactly does he fit in? Because this Chelsea team, it's all well and good getting excited about all these new signings, about Chilwell, about Havertz, about Werner. But how long is it going to take for them all to gel? How long is it going to take them all to buy into the club's philosophy? They won't all settle first season. Don't expect them to all pick up on last season's form straight away. So I just question whether there's going to be a bit of transition time there for Ziyech and the other new faces.
He joined the club in February, so, you know, I bet he's had a lot of time to look at Frank Lampard's tactics and all of that. But, you know, I think he's in a similar position to Mohamed Salah when he joined Liverpool from Roma. A lot of people didn't know what he was going to provide in the Premier League, a bit of an unknown factor. But because of his creativity and how dangerous he is as a player, he was able to score so many goals by taking so many risks. And I think Hakim Ziyech will replicate that, but with incredible passes. And we saw that in Chelsea's first preseason game against Brighton. He played a great cross, which was a second assist, and that was his only contribution before getting injured.
So you heard it here first. Hakim Ziyech will score 32 goals in the Premier League this season, according to Malik Shafai, who does have a bit of a soft spot for North African players. I would say that has been a bit of a theme in these AFHQ podcasts. I appreciate your optimism. I do think Ziyech is a very special player. I think at 27, he has got some great years ahead of him. Where exactly do you see him fitting into the Chelsea team?
You know, he plays a lot on the right wing, but also in center attacking mid. So and Havertz also does. So that's the main question for Lampard. But I'm hoping we see him play centrally with Havertz on the wing and Pulisic on the left wing, with Werner up top, obviously. I just think he operated well there in the Champions League with Ajax, and, you know, we get more action from him in the center. So I think that would be ideal.
So you're expecting something of a 4-2-3-1 with Ziyech as the number 10?
Do you not?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I just think that maybe it'll be Werner off Tammy Abraham, which therefore I think would mean Ziyech shoved out wide. I think at Ajax, obviously, we saw him a lot in a 4-3-3 formation, playing in a wider role. He's an intelligent player. He's versatile. He's technically proficient. I think he can fit in a lot of different positions, but it'll be interesting to see what Frank has planned. Also, I wonder whether in the Premier League, a number 10 needs to be scoring a few more goals than Ziyech has perhaps managed. I'm not saying he doesn't have it in his locker, but I think in that formation, that player who is the second most offensive player, they maybe need to be offering a little bit more in front of goal.
Just because you said that, he's going to score 2 worldies this season. That's my prediction.
Well, yeah, but 2 worldies all season. I mean, that's not great, is it? We need double figures really if he's going to be competing for African Player of the Season, which is what you're tipping him for.
No, if it's outside the box, it counts as twice. More people watching, it's more views, just as good as a normal goal.
Is that right? I hadn't heard about that. That's very interesting. First VAR and now this. Let me get a quick prediction from you. Who will have a hand in more goals this season, Pepe or Ziyech?
I'm going to have to go with Ziyech. Yeah, and if we're doing all competitions, I'm going to go with Pepe. He's going to get a lot of goals in the Europa League against those small teams. I talk about it a lot, but it's what he's going to do, and you know it.
We will definitely be talking about it a lot. Okay, even though we're tipping those 2 guys to be the African best player of the season, obviously they are perhaps not going to be contenders for the Golden Boot. Our next section, we are looking at which players we are tipping for the top scorer award. I think these days it's an African award in one hand because African players generally feature so high up in the goal scoring charts. But also these are guys who could be competing with the likes of Sergio Aguero, with Jamie Vardy, with Harry Kane to win the overall award. Season before last, we saw 3 African players share it: Aubameyang, Salah, Sadio Mane. But Malik, who is your prediction as Africa's top scorer in the 2020-2021 season?
I'm going to go with Mohamed Salah. I think he had a bit of a dip in form last season, although he still played brilliantly. But I think he's going to score so many goals this season. I feel like a lot of people are doubting Liverpool, saying they won't win again. But I personally think they will, and I think Salah will be at the center of that.
You're not worried about potential burnout? I mean, he didn't have a break in summer 2018 with the World Cup when he was rushed back with injury. Last season, he had the Africa Cup of Nations and the emotional trauma of Egypt's exit. I'm sure you remember that well. And obviously this summer when he was meant to have something of a break, obviously coronavirus has denied that, has denied players that. So do you think Salah can, he's been lucky with injuries, but do you really think he can keep going till the end of this season?
I think so. Like he's not by himself. A lot of players have been forced to play a lot, and if anything, Egypt's early exit at the AFCON might benefit him because he got a little bit more rest. As much as it pains me to say it.
I don't know. I'm worried that the 2020-21 calendar, with all of the international fixtures that need to be played that haven't been played yet, I'm worried there is going to be a lot of travelling, a lot of demand on, especially those Liverpool forwards, Salah and Mane, who played a lot last season. The previous 2 seasons, they went the distance in the Champions League. So these guys have played a lot of matches. They've been lucky with injuries last season. I worry about Liverpool's rotational options because maybe they haven't got the backup forwards there to be able to, say, take Mane or Salah off after 65, 70 minutes with the game in the balance. And I mean, as we'll talk about later, I worry overall about Liverpool's chances of retaining the title. But we've seen year on year, Salah's goal output has diminished. And while his overall contribution hasn't necessarily diminished, I don't know if he'll be any closer to that 3rd Golden Boot this term.
So who do you think, if not Salah? Is Liverpool teammate Mane?
No, I am going to go for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. He got 22 goals last season, 22 goals the season before. His consistency in front of goal, both in Germany and now in England, is undoubted. And I don't see why he's going to get fewer goals than that. I think the only question is how many more goals than that he's going to score, considering that these are more optimistic, brighter times for Arsenal. We'll have Pepe stronger. He will have Willian as well. I think Willian is going to be such a great acquisition for Arsenal. Plus Lacazette, Nketiah, Saka, a support cast who are going to lay on plenty of chances for him. And I realise I've gone for a bit of an Arsenal 1-2 here with the player of the season, the top scorer, but I really am that confident about the Gunners' chances.
I was just about to say, do you think Pepe can win player of the season without being in the running for the Golden Boot?
It depends exactly on how he's used, but I certainly think so. I mean, we saw in France in the season before he came, he got 11 assists. His creativity at times when we've seen him really take control of matches has been mesmerising. And I think he's going to have a big role to play in Aubameyang winning the Golden Boot. I think both of them, it's going to be a very productive season. And from a Tottenham point of view, I'm a little bit worried, to be honest. Although from an African point of view, I'm very optimistic.
Well, there's a lot of other players to consider too. At Crystal Palace, we have Wilfred Zaha, Jordan Ayew, even Ebe Eze could get up there maybe. A lot of strong players, even Adama Traore at Wolves, he could get in there.
Yeah, I think it would take a lot. Last season, we saw good performances from all of those guys, but it would take an awful lot for them to bridge the gap to Africa's top scorers and for Africa's top scorers in the last few seasons to also come a few notches down. I think maybe the player I would look at as a dark horse for that kind of that honour is maybe Mahrez. I think he proved in Leicester's title-winning season that when in the right positions, in the right moments, he's really lethal in front of goal. We saw it again at times last season for Man City, and I think depending on how he's used this season, I'm expecting a really strong campaign for City, and I think Mahrez is going to end up with more goals than the likes of Jordan, Kelechi and Acho, the African players in the middle of the table. But you never know, maybe a new signing will arrive in the Premier League between now and early October, and maybe we'll have someone else to talk about in the top scorer charts.
I have a question for you. By the end of the season, who has more goals? Crystal Palace's African front three combined or Aubameyang?
Aubameyang.
Interesting. Well, that's pretty damning for those three Palace players. We'll see at the end of the season.
You'd need two of them probably to hit double figures, and I can't really see that. Yeah, I'm going to go with Aubameyang now, I'm afraid.
We'll check the tapes.
How often Zaha and Eze will be playing together as well, because both of them have played in a similar role last season on the left side, coming inside. So there are a few question marks about Eze stepping up to the Premier League, about what he will contribute in terms of goals. I'm hopeful, but I maybe wouldn't bet against Aubameyang at this stage.
Now on to the Premier League title race. We have Liverpool and City, who've always been at the top for a while, but there's a few more clubs who are battling to get into that top spot. Personally, I believe Liverpool will win the title. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, well, that's one of the great things I think about the Premier League these days, and definitely this season, I think, is that we are almost certainly going to have an African winner. I think unless maybe Leeds United win the Premier League, all of the top teams have got African players playing key roles, especially now with Ziyech back at Chelsea. So we are almost certainly going to have an African winner. It's just a case of who it's going to be. I know you're very confident that Liverpool are going to continue their momentum of last season, whereas I think that City have so much to prove after what was a pretty dire season. That I'm tipping City. I'm tipping Mahrez. He's him personally. He's obviously been there, done that before. Achieved great success with Leicester City. Great success with Manchester City. And we saw an improvement from him last season. He played about 600 more minutes in the Premier League than he had done the season before. As of yet, there's been no kind of major offensive reinforcements at City. Apart from Ferran Torres, it'll be interesting to see what role he plays. But I'm expecting a really big campaign from Mahrez, and I think he's going to end up with another Premier League winners medal. Liverpool, I'm not so confident. Why are you seemingly backing them to the hilt?
I feel like there's some kind of media bias against them. Just subconsciously, everyone thinks that because they had a few bad results after they had won the title, that they're going to play terribly this season. I don't see why that's the case. After March, they had nothing to play for after going out of the Champions League. So they had a lot of time to rest. They'll be in a better position than a lot of clubs, I think. And although they didn't make a lot of purchases in the transfer window, with the squad they have, I think is enough. And they've shown it's enough to win the Premier League.
Yeah, I think maybe some of the younger players coming through and the guys they bought midway through the last season who didn't really get a chance to show what they can do, I think they may assuage some of the concerns. However, I do understand where these skeptics are coming from. I mean, after lockdown, Liverpool, obviously, like you said, they didn't have so much to play for. But even though that may explain their drop in form, it may still be a problem heading into the new campaign because momentum is so important. I mean, you look at a team like Arsenal, not only did they beat Liverpool in the Community Shield, they also won the FA Cup. They started the season strongly. They ended the season strongly, sorry. Manchester United as well improved a lot after lockdown. I think they will be buoyed by that heading into the new campaign. Whereas Jurgen Klopp, despite saying relentlessly that Liverpool wouldn't take their eyes off the ball, they did take their eyes off the ball after the title had been secured. And it'll be interesting to see whether they can pick that momentum back up again and retain the focus that they have done for the last two seasons. Because I tell you what, it's not easy to win the Premier League, but it's much, much trickier to retain it, especially after the two the emotional effort it's taken for them to reach 2 Champions League finals, to get 97 points, then to finish the season so strongly, or to win the league so comfortably last term. Plus, I think they were perhaps lucky with. I'm not that convinced by their squad as you are. I think they were fairly lucky at times last season with injuries and fitness problems. And I worry they may be stretched too much this term.
Wow. We'll see if Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane can score to shut you up. But
also Naby Keita, because Naby Keita made 9 starts last season. Joel Matip made 9 overall appearances last season in the league. These aren't great numbers from 2 players who played much bigger roles the season before. So I think if Liverpool are going to retain the title, obviously Salah and Mane need to kind of match their performances from last term. But I think Jurgen Klopp will also need to get much more from Keita. It's not entirely his fault that things haven't worked out, but I think if you look at that squad and areas where things could improve and get better, I don't know if you're going to get so much more out of Robertson. I don't know if you're going to get so much more out of Henderson, for example. But I think Keita is someone who can contribute a lot more to that Liverpool squad and help this team improve.
What about, besides Chelsea and Liverpool, can Hakim Ziyech and Chelsea win? Can Odion Ighalo and Manchester United win? What do you think?
I think they've all got a long way to go to catch City and obviously to match what Liverpool have achieved the last few seasons. I think Chelsea, while we saw a lot of good things from them last term, I'm not totally confident by the way they've bolstered the back line for now. At the time of us speaking, Kepa remains the number 1, which would remain a major concern for me. Obviously, if Edouard Mendy comes in, provides some competition, we could see a change there. But I don't think, as good as Mendy is, I don't think he's a player who's going to transform this Chelsea team into title winners. I'd probably look more at Arsenal and United, who have momentum, and they've already they're at an earlier stage of their progress, I guess. And it'll be interesting to see what those 2 could do. I don't think Arsenal, with William Saliba coming in, hopefully solving a defensive problem, Gabriel also coming in to kind of consolidate a problem area. I can't believe I'm kind of saying this, but I'm a little bit worried about what Arsenal are going to do this season, to be honest.
Now you're talking crazy. So we're just going to move on to the next section. Players with a point to prove this season. An African player who might not have had the best season last time out, but they're coming out this season with a point to prove. Who are you nominating, Ed?
Well, we've talked a lot about the guys who have achieved great things, who are thriving at the top of the division, but obviously below that, and even among those top teams, you look at a guy like Ighalo, who you mentioned, hasn't yet scored in the Premier League with United. He's got a point to prove, I think. El Neni given a second shot of life at Arsenal, point to prove there, I think, as well. Or also Serge Aurier, because even though there were improvements in Aurier going forward at Tottenham, still a lot of critics, rightly so. So it'll be interesting to see whether, I think he's in a bit of a make or break season already in North London, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. However, I am going to plump for this section, I'm going to plump for Alex Iwobi. Big fan, lovely guy. 1 goal and 0 assists at Everton is not good enough by any standard. Obviously, it was a transitional season. Questions about has he found his best position at Everton, but so much more is expected because that was bad. And it wasn't like the performances were good, but things weren't coming off. The performances weren't great either, to be honest.
I was going to ask what you think his best position is. Do you think he's better on the wing or in the middle?
It feels like so long since we've seen Iwobi at his best position, at his best, that it's kind of hard to really point to any evidence to kind of back up an argument. I'd say not as a number 10, I'm afraid. I don't think he's got the creativity. I don't think he's really he penetrates enough to really command that position at a team in the top half of the Premier League with the aspirations Everton have. Particularly Everton, they've had a problem for so long with so many central creative players. Guys like Richarlison, Sigurdsson, now James Rodriguez, who can all be used out wide, but really they don't really have the kind of pace to play out wide, really. So someone like Iwobi, who's much more mobile, you can easily put him out there. So I think on the left side of a 4-2-3-1, maybe on the left of a 4-3-3, maybe, but I don't know. What about you?
I'm personally excited to see him on the wing, especially with Thomas Rodriguez in the middle. That probably will be a bit of competition for him. And at Arsenal, it was fun to see him out in the wing back in his youth days. So hoping we can see that. But my nomination for a player with a point to prove is Wilfried Zaha, the Ivorian striker who has been held captive at Crystal Palace for the past few years. It seems like no matter what he does, he can't get a move out of London. And despite all of his great performances, Roy Hodgson and all the previous managers have refused to sell him. He has a great asking price, but I think Zaha needs to prove to all those clubs that he's worth it, and needs to force Hodgson to sell him. If he, say, scores 10 or 15 goals in the first half of the season and is firing Crystal Palace to a top 10 spot, maybe near the Europa League, I think all the clubs will be around him, and Hodgson won't have a choice whether or not he wants to keep him. What do you think?
I've got to stop you there, mate, because you said whatever he does, Zaha can't get a move away. Last season, he scored 4 goals. He got 3 assists. He perhaps sulked. He admitted himself he let his head go a little bit for the first half of the campaign. If you are one of Europe's biggest clubs, if you're PSG, if you're Dortmund, and you're looking around, who's the player who can make a difference in the final third? Are you really going to look at a guy in his late 20s with having handed 7 goals last season who has himself acknowledged there are issues about his attitude? I don't think so.
You have to admit he's class. You have to.
Yeah, he is class in moments. He really is class in moments. And the combination of the physique, the technical ability, the pace, the ingenuity, it's fantastic. But 4 goals and 3 assists, it's not enough. It's not enough in that team. When you're being eclipsed by Jordan Ayew, love the guy, but when you're being eclipsed by Jordan Ayew, you're not going to be getting the moves to Dortmund. You're not going to be getting the kind of moves to, forget Arsenal. No one's even talking about Zaha going to Arsenal, going to City, or going to Chelsea anymore. You'd be laughed out of town if you talked about him going to Chelsea anymore. They've moved on. And now I think, and the only person to blame for that, I think, is Zaha, because to be that kind of world-class player, to be considered among those kind of players, you've got to demonstrate consistently. Zaha, we talked about Ziyech, 40 assists. Zaha got 3 last season. That says it all, doesn't it? Yeah, I agree with you. Point to prove. Massive point to prove.
All right. Well, I guess you were swayed. We're going to move on to our next section, breakout players. You get what it means. A player who's going to break out and will be highly rated after this season. Who do you have, Ed?
Right, you're going to laugh at me. I can feel the giggles coming already. I'm going to stick with the Everton theme. I'm going to go for Jean-Philippe Gbamin. I know he's 24. I know he's not a youngster. I know he's already been in the Premier League for a year. But when he does return, if he does return, because the guy has been out since August 2019. If and when he does return, I think it's going to be like a new signing for Everton. I think people are going to really see what this guy's about, because I was really excited when he moved to Goodison Park from Mainz. He's versatile. He can play in different positions. He's big. He's mobile. He is smart. He's a good presence. I don't think Everton would have had the miserable half season they did have last season had Gbamin been fit. And I think when he returns, hopefully if he can rediscover his level, I think he'll be the breakout star at Goodison Park and one of Africa's breakout stars in the season.
How do you think he's going to get any minutes? They signed Alan, Doucouré. They're both players in this position, and he was just out injured. I can't see him getting back into the squad.
That would be a concern. I worry that he'll come back in November. He will maybe start playing in December, and then he'll be loaned out or sold in January. But I think where I see a fit Gbamin, if Everton right now had signed Gbamin from that final season in Mainz, I would put him in the centre of the defence alongside Mason Holgate. We've seen him play there before in the past. He has all the tools to be a good centre-back. I think he needs to prove that he can impose himself in the Premier League. But I think a central pairing of Holgate and Gbamin, protected by Doucouré and Alan with Andre Gomez perhaps pulling the strings in midfield, suddenly you're looking at a spine there that is going to be very hard for teams to break down, very hard for teams to beat. I don't think Yerry Mina and Michael Keane are good enough to take Everton to the next level. I think Holgate and Gbamin defensive partnership, again, it's a big if Gbamin can retain his former level, but I think that could be something special. Have I
You think
convinced you that he could be the breakout star of the season yet?
you did a decent job convincing me that he might be able to get a start, but do you think you're a better tactician than Don Carlo Ancelotti?
Well, I'm not saying. I mean, Ancelotti hasn't yet had the opportunity to use him he hasn't had the opportunity to use him full stop. I mean, Gbamin hasn't played. He got injured in August. He was due back, I think, in January. He got injured in December, which would keep him out until something like May. There was hope that with lockdown and football's resumption being pushed back, he could play in June, July. However, he suffered another injury, which will keep him out till November. So both Ancelotti and I have not yet had the chance to really implement our tactical style on an Everton with Gbamin in there. So yeah, hopefully Ancelotti will take a leaf out of my book.
So what have you seen from him in the past 12 months of him sitting on the bench or in the recovery room that makes you think he's going to break out?
Well, no, I'm basing my argument on what we saw from him in Germany, what we saw from him earlier in his career. Obviously, there are doubts around whether a player who's been out that long, who's suffered that succession of injuries, whether, first of all, they can stay injury-free, and secondly, whether they can return to their previous level. They are two major concerns. However, I believe there's a quality player in there, still only 24, and I think that once he's back, he does have a role to play in this new look Everton team.
He was signed to be Idrissa Gueye's replacement, an African in the midfield for Everton, but well, I hope he does. My pick is Ghanaian right back Tariq Lamptey. He's only 19 years old. He started off at Chelsea, made his debut last season, but was signed by Brighton. And after lockdown, we saw him in full form. Absolutely amazing. Locking up Jamie Vardy, whoever it was, he was on the task. So, you could argue that he broke out a bit last season, but I think by the end of this season, he's going to be, if not the best, one of the best young fullbacks in the Premier League.
How high do you think Lamptey can go? Obviously, he's eligible for Ghana, eligible for England. Can you see him breaking into the England team one day? Could you see him returning to a club like Chelsea, a club competing at the top of the table?
As a footballer, he's only 5'5", which puts a lot of people off, unfortunately, because some people just think you need a tall footballer to play defense regardless. But you've seen with a lot of players, if as long as you have the pace, you're able to catch up and you're able to make good tackles and play out the back, that's all you need. And Lamptey has shown that. So I think at the club level, if he keeps improving, he's already great physically, but if he improves technically, I don't see why he can't move to a top team. And then on international level, he's currently with the England U21s at the time of recording, but I can't see a path to get into the starting spot. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Reece James, you could argue Kyle Walker. Do you see a path for him into the England spot? Because I think he should move to Ghana.
I agree. There are similar concerns. I think that we're going to need another 18 months, 2 years before, because things can change so quickly. Obviously, you didn't mention Trippier there, but he's another player who will still be there for the next kind of cycle. But after that, if Lamptey's still eligible for England, I think that would be the time to maybe assess the lay of the land. I agree with pretty much everything you said there. I think that fullbacks if I see a fullback who's small, a lot of people consider it as a weakness, a deficiency in the player. But actually, for me, when I see that, I think, wow, he must be seriously good, because he's got to this stage in his career, this level in the game, with enough managers, enough coaches clearly having faith in him, being able to overlook his stature. And when you see him play, you talked about that tussle with Jamie Vardy. I love the combativeness we see from him. The way he relishes duels. He's kind of an old-fashioned fullback in that sense, that he loves to kind of... A lot of fullbacks, they avoid being put in one-on-one situations against wingers or fast forwards. He seems to really relish those duels, those one-on-one contacts, which is something that really set him apart from other fullbacks that I saw last season. Plus the pace, which is a massive asset wherever you go, really.
Yeah, it's really frightening that he's with the England squad now. The Ghana Football Association really needs to get on him.
Yeah, the long-time successor to Harrison Affle, perhaps.
Definitely, that would be a great fit. Two diminutive fullbacks. That's perfect. On to our penultimate segment. We're going to talk about new signings coming into the Premier League. There haven't been too many, although there are a few rumored. But Ed, which signing that has come to the Premier League are you most excited about?
Right, you're going to have to let me know if this is within the rules, but I'm going to go for Grady Diangana. I know he's not really a new signing to the Premier League because he's moving from one Premier League club to another, but he was in the Championship last season. We've only seen him briefly in the Premier League, so I hope you'll let me slip this one under the net. Yeah, Diangana for me, I think when players at a club come out publicly to complain about a player being sold, I mean, it's one thing if it's kind of like the club's talisman or the club's top goal scorer that's being sold. I can understand why players might complain there. But for players to come out complaining, especially Mark Noble, who's been such a figure of professionalism and consistency and offers a great example off field, for him to criticise the West Ham board for selling Grady Diangana, who is essentially a youth player who's now 22, hasn't proved anything in the Premier League, is shocking, quite frankly. I think that's testament to the talent that West Ham are losing, and also what Noble believes, having played with him, that Diangana could offer in the Premier League for the Hammers next season. He will sign permanently for West Bromwich Albion, with whom he played in the Championship last term. So he knows the setup, he knows Slaven Bilic, he knows how he's going to fit into that team. I think very exciting player. My only concern would be whether he's going to get the chance at a club who are predicted to be bottom or 19th in the table, whether he's going to see enough of the ball to make an impact in the final third. But I'm very excited to see what Diangana can do this season. And I think the Hammers may well regret letting him go, even if 18 million is a good fee for a player who hasn't proved himself in the Premier League. What about you? Who are you going for?
I went with Crystal Palace signing Ebe Eze. We mentioned him earlier on the show, but the English Nigerian wonder kid is such a joy to watch, and I can't wait to see him link up with fellow Africans Wilfred Zaha and Jordan Ayew. He impressed a lot with QPR last season. He wasn't able to get them to promotion. I think he had a hand in like 12 goals, but he's 6 feet tall. He's really well balanced, so I think he'd be a good fit for the Premier League. I'm not sure exactly where he's going to play. We touched on that earlier. But, overall, looking at all the new signings, obviously Ziyech is a big one. I tipped him for player of the season, didn't tip him for best signing, but he's there. But I'm going to have to go with Eze. He's a great player, and I'm excited. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that we've both chosen players who impressed in the Championship last term, who are making a step up, maybe evidence of how clubs in the bottom half of the Premier League are looking to operate in the transfer market during these current kind of financial constraints. And yeah, as a really exciting player, looked great at a QPR team last term where he was very much the big fish in a small pond. It'll be interesting to see both at a bigger club alongside better players and obviously in a much tougher league, whether he can translate last season's form to this season.
On to our final section. We're going to talk about a player who might be tipped to flop. They're not in great circumstances coming into the season, and the chances they fail really terribly, although we don't hope that happens. Ed, what do you think?
Yeah, we know who you're going for. You're clearly going for Gbamin after your character assassination of him earlier. For me, I'm going to go, and I think it'll be interesting to get your opinion on this. I'm going to go for Mbwana Samatta of Aston Villa. Good player, a lot of qualities. I can see why Villa bought him. I can see why he agreed to sign for them. And I wasn't surprised he scored in his debut against Bournemouth. I was surprised he didn't score another goal in the Premier League after that. I was surprised that Dean Smith opted to play Keenan Davis ahead of him, a rookie who never really looked like scoring in the Premier League. And now Villa have signed Ollie Watkins of Brentford for another big fee. So realistically, you could argue at the moment that Samatta's the fourth choice striker at Villa because obviously Wesley's still going to come back. And I just think for a player like that to be able to show what he can do, he needs, first of all, ample playing time. And secondly, he needs the faith of the manager. And it appears at this stage that, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but it appears as though Samatta has neither of those.
Yeah, after the lockdown, when Keenan Davis was starting, I thought it was so disrespectful to Samatta. He's such a prolific scorer everywhere he's gone. And now he's getting benched for this rookie who's never scored in the Premier League. I do want to add, I think it's a testament to how great Trezeguet was that he was able to fire Aston Villa to safety with basically two strikers who hadn't scored in the Premier League. But besides the point, He's still very talented. He holds the ball up very well. I think I rate him over Davis, definitely, and possibly over Wesley. But the fact that Aston Villa have signed a 30 million striker in Wesley and in Ollie Watkins in 2 straight seasons doesn't look good for Samatta. So based on the depth chart, as you said, it seems like maybe he should be looking to find a better spot in the bench or move elsewhere. But in the cup, he scored in the EFL Cup against City. So I think in those cup competitions he could be used well. But yeah, it's going to be tough for him. But I don't think he'll be a flop. Given what he does, I also do predict he'll score at least one Premier League goal. He'll break the deadlock.
I think we're maybe expecting more than one Premier League goal from him. I mean, even despite Trezeguet's heroics, it was still in the balance when Villa played West Ham in their final league game. And Samatta missed, one of, if not the best chance of the game when he headed over in that match. And imagine if he'd missed that, Villa had gone down, how he would have been vilified. I think maybe I'm a bit more surprised actually that he's not been rumoured for the exit door this window, because I don't think, based on the evidence we saw, that Dean Smith fancies him or that he has a big part to play for this team. So unfortunately, maybe he'll emulate last season's tally and get one Premier League goal, but I'm not hoping for big things. I think actually I'd like to see him move. I'd like to see him go to a club like maybe like Norwich, maybe like Derby, or a club at the top of the Championship where he'll get a lot of game time. He can be the leading man and he can be promoted with the team organically and learn the ropes in English football that way.
Wow. I hope he's able to find his form that he had at Timba, Mazembe, and Genk. We hope he can find that in the Premier League. But that is the conclusion of the episode. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for coming on, Ed.
Pleasure.
Let us know what you thought about the episode and which Africans will perform terrifically in the Premier League next season. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe.